Is Friday lunchtime, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission taking a major step towards the possible breakup of Facebook by formally filing an antitrust lawsuit against the tech giant, accusing it of abusing its monopoly powers in social networking to, and I quote, stifle competition. So what's behind it? How much chance does this lawsuit have? Toby Shapshak is the editor-in-chief of the tech magazine Stuff and also a respected technology commentator. So, Toby, accusing Facebook then of abusing its monopoly powers to stifle competition. We've, of course, heard this before. How serious are these charges?
They're very serious, Jeremy, and it's unlikely that this is going to go away, given the broad scope of all of these antitrust cases. 2 months ago, Google was served with papers. They're also being investigated, and we know from hearings early in the year when the CEOs of all of these companies were there that both Amazon and Apple are also under investigation. So this is a big reversal of the great position that Silicon Valley has held in, or the great esteem Silicon Valley has been held by the American establishment, by the government, by Wall Street. They've really fallen out of love with Silicon Valley, especially after the 2016 scandals that broke democracy, Brexit, and the US presidential election, where foreign powers and a commercial company interfered in voting processes. So for the last 4 years, there's been a gradual realization just of the power and the excessive power and control and monopoly that all of these tech firms and social media firms have taken. The Facebook one is very interesting because in some of the revelations that came out of the hearings in the middle of the year, I think it was the one in July, they published enormous amounts of information from subpoenaed records and emails. In one email exchange, Mark Zuckerberg basically says words to, I don't remember the exact words, but basically says, talking about Instagram, you can just buy them, we'll just buy them, and they did. And then immediately after another comment, he sent an email saying, no, of course, that's not what we're going to do, realizing that someone could read his emails much later. So in the Instagram and WhatsApp scenarios, we know very clearly that Facebook bought them because they were the main competition. The youth were leaving Facebook and going to Instagram, which they bought for $1 billion in 2012. And by the time they bought WhatsApp, 2 years later, the value of the competition had gone up to 19 billion. And of course, these are three of the largest social networks in the world, controlled by one company, with a historic record of not really caring about our privacy or our data and constantly making mistakes. Mark Zuckerberg often says, I'm responsible, and yes, he's never accountable. It's simply because he owns or has the vast majority of voting shares in Facebook. He very cleverly structured it that way. But the bottom line is there's been no greater communication network in the world than the one created by Facebook, including Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, all of whom have over 1 billion users. Facebook itself has over 2.2 billion users. And what we essentially have is also the most destructive and dangerous communication network. Facebook has become somewhere which has amplified hate speech and misogyny and racism, denialists, conspiracy theories like QAnon, just anti-Semitism. Every bad thing in the world has gained traction in this vast digital loudhailer that Facebook has continuously refused to take control of, to the point where it was able to influence the Brexit election and the US presidential elections, both in 2016, and a lot else. So it's unlikely that the government's going to back down. But Facebook's argument is that, well, why did they allow it in the first place? I think some naivety on the part of the commissioners who approved it, the trade commissioners, is coming down. So no. I don't trust Facebook. I think Facebook do not have our best interests at heart. They have their own interests at heart, and they've become an $800 billion-dollar company, Jeremy, and the product that they sell is us. What we like, what we think of, how we communicate. They have what's called shadow profiles of every user, in fact, of everybody who has access. Facebook would track people even if they aren't Facebook users. So Facebook has a digital profile of us. The industry calls them shadow profiles. Facebook's never acknowledged their existence. But they know more about us than our own government. And that's why they call it surveillance capitalism.
It really is scary stuff. Toby Shapshak, thanks for the update. Tech commentator and editor-in-chief of the magazine Stuff.